The following pictures are of a very different Iran, an Iran of over 50 years ago. They offer an opportunity for those familiar with today's Iran to compare yesterday and today and realize how much Iran has changed since then. Many factors have contributed to these immense changes, including the autocratic rule of Reza Shah Pahlavi, reinstalled to power in 1953, the 1979 Islamic Revolution conversion of the country to a theocratic republic under Ayatollah Khomeini, the advent of the Internet and widespread use of computers. In the spring of 1957, as part of a U.S. Army team, I was sent to Iran to conduct surveys across the country. We were part of a worldwide cooperative effort called the 1957-58 International Geophysical Year, IGY, to obtain Earth measurements. Our work consisted of setting up observation stations on mountain peaks and placing lights on other mountain peaks many miles away. We would use precise surveying instruments, theodolites, to observe and record the angles between lights. In some cases, as many as several days would be required just to get to and from the mountains, requiring four-wheel drive trucks, pack animals, hiking, and horseback. The roads we traveled were mostly unpaved, some only dirt or even little more than jeep trails. The towns through which we passed were very rural and undeveloped. The Iranians carried out their daily activities mostly outdoors. Stores were generally open-air establishments. Agriculture, the main method of livelihood, is evident throughout the area. People everywhere, except in the very large, more modern cities, were friendly and anxious to meet me and talk. We had Iranian translators and military personnel to interface and coordinate with the local people. Heavily loaded donkeys are a common means of transportation. The country also had a large population of nomadic people that tend livestock, mostly goats, moving their herds to follow grazing areas as these areas respond to temperature and moisture changes throughout the year. Good grazing moves from the lowlands in spring and summer to higher elevations in the fall and rainy season. These people construct temporary shelters of various types as they move around. These women are mixing straw with some dark material, forming it into patties and stacking it for storage. What exactly it is, I'm not sure, but their baby seems happy enough sitting on a blanket in the middle of it. On this particular trip to a mountain, we had to travel through a sandstorm. I went through 2 sandstorms, and they turned out to be much more ominous looking as they approached than they actually turned out to be. People from a nearby village have arrived at the end of the road, hoping to be hired to carry our equipment up the mountain. The Iranian officer is showing the lead person where we want to go on the map. That's where we want to go. The lead man is negotiating the price to carry our equipment that far and high. The farther and higher we want to go, the higher the price. Sometimes, if the climb was harder than they had expected, or just because they could, they would sit down halfway up and demand more money. That's where negotiations were really finalized. Finally, we make the last scramble to the top. The observation tent and sleeping tents have been set up. As you can see, we really are on the very top of the mountain. As is also evident, our tents had to be set up on a sloping surface. I had to prop up the downhill side legs of my cot with rocks to keep from falling out of bed. 3 views from the top. We had a couple of Iranian soldiers with us on each mountain as helpers and to prepare meals. Here, a fresh killed rabbit is being prepared. It was pretty good. Water was brought up daily or as needed to the mountain by someone from the local village. After delivering the water, it was time for him to take a break and have a smoke. One day this man wandered by in search of game. He stayed a while and visited. Often people from surrounding villages would come up and stay for a visit. I was, after all, a pretty interesting occurrence and well worth the climb to see. On one station there were 2 villages nearby. They had me over for lunch on separate occasions and tried to outdo each other. They spread out Persian carpets under the trees, and the whole village turned out for the feast. I didn't always know what it was that I was eating, but, by and large, the food was very good. There was, of course, music. Iranians love to have a party, and music is always a part of it. The fellow with the flute made his living by playing in exchange for money. In southern Iran, we stayed in the city of Bam. Outside the modern city of Bam is the ruined city of Argi Bam, made entirely of mud bricks, clay, and straw. The city was originally founded during the 1st century AD, and while some of the surviving structures do date to that period, most of what remains was built between 1502 and 1722. During these times, the city covered 6 square kilometers, was surrounded by a rampart with 38 towers, and had between 9,000 and 13,000 inhabitants. Bam prospered because of pilgrims visiting its 1st century Zoroastrian fire temple and as a commercial and trading center on the famous Silk Road. Bam declined in importance following an invasion by Afghans in 1722 and another by invaders from the region of Shiraz, Iran, in 1810. The city was used as a barracks for the Iranian army until 1932 and then completely abandoned. Wikipedia reports that intensive restoration work began in 1953 and continues today. However, I saw no evidence of any work being done in 1957 and little evidence that much work had been done before. The 6.6 magnitude earthquake that struck the region in December 2003 caused considerable damage to both the modern and ancient cities of Bam. In the modern city, the earthquake injured 30,000 and caused 26,000 deaths. Much of the reason for the large numbers of dead and injured is because even in modern Bam, houses are made of mud brick and unreinforced concrete structures, not meeting modern earthquake standards. These are human remains sticking out of the bank of a nearby river. I encountered this young goat herder tending his flock on a mountainside. He wasn't at all sure he liked me or wanted his picture taken. Outside one of the villages was a man and his son chopping hay with a homemade machine. I spent a night in this house on the way to another mountain. The human living quarters were above and the animal living quarters were below. These folks are coating copper kettles with some sort of coating using an open fire. The person in the background is cleaning the kettle prior to coating by twisting with his feet a rag in the kettle coated with an abrasive while holding on to pegs set into the wall. One of many tea houses at which we stop frequently while on the road. Iranian tea is quite good and served with sugar. Hot water for tea is made in a samovar using coal or dung for fuel. The young man is balancing a pile of noon, or Persian bread he just purchased from the baker. He was on a shopping trip with the rest of his family that day. This is one of the famous masonry structure bridges constructed by the Persians. This one was constructed in 1602 or thereabouts. The next group of slides are a Christian church in the very religious and famous Isfahan in central Iran. It was originally built by the Armenians about 1600.
چون مرا دل خستگی از آرزوی روی تو این چنین دل خستگی زایل به مرهم شود.
One of the largest, most beautiful, most famous, and oldest mosques in Iran is also in Isfahan, and the following slides are of that mosque.
تا تو از در نیایی از دلم غم که شود تا تو از در نیایی از دلم غم که شود.
In November, about halfway through the job, the weather turned bad, making surveying observations impossible, so we headed for the capital, Tehran. We spent the next few months in Tehran relaxing, cleaning equipment, partying, and of course we had Christmas. Here I am during that time and showing off my Lederhosen that was purchased in Germany for me by one of the other surveyors. These are scenes taken around Tehran and in the huge indoor bazaar located there. I left Iran in the summer of 1958, having been there for 15 months. Overall, it was a very good experience. I was, however, ready to come home. Yes, we actually did have snow in Tehran around Christmas time.